All right, you ready for this? We're going to deep dive into a classic today. Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. I mean, who couldn't use a little help with that?
You know, it's funny. Carnegie didn't actually start out to write a self-help book. He was a public speaking teacher.
Yeah.
And he kind of realized that even the best speakers, they wouldn't get very far if they couldn't connect with people on like a personal level.
It's true. It's like having the best slides, but totally bombing the presentation.
Yeah.
So he started studying all these, like famous people, Edison, Roosevelt, to try to figure out how they were so charismatic.
Exactly. And the fact that his book, which was published all the way back in 1937, is still like a top seller today, really proves that he was onto something timeless.
It's so true. It's like human connection. It's like more important than ever,
Mm-hmm.
especially in our crazy world. So we're going to focus on the techniques for handling people, making people like you, winning them over to your way of thinking, and becoming a leader. All right, so Carnegie jumps right into some techniques for handling people.
Yeah, he really does.
That might seem a little counterintuitive. Like the first one, don't criticize, condemn, or complain.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Isn't that how we learn? Being told what we're doing wrong?
You know, think about it. When was the last time someone criticized you? And you were like, oh, I'm so glad they pointed that out.
Probably never.
Right. Instead, we just get defensive.
Totally.
And resentful.
Yeah. Like, I'm just picturing my old boss who was always like nitpicking everything. And it made me not even want to go to work.
And it definitely doesn't make you want to do better.
No, it doesn't.
Carnegie uses this example of a safety coordinator in Oklahoma who was trying to force workers to wear hard hats just by constantly criticizing them. And they would literally take them off as soon as he turned his back.
Wow. So if criticizing doesn't work, how do you get people to change their behavior?
Well, Carnegie contrasts this with how President Hoover dealt with a mechanic who made a mistake servicing his plane. And instead of like reprimanding him or anything, he actually showed confidence in the mechanic by entrusting him with the same task the next day.
So instead of criticizing, Hoover focused on building the mechanic's confidence, which makes so much more sense.
Right. It's a much more human approach.
Yeah.
There's also this really powerful story that's reprinted in the book. It's an editorial called Father Forgets. It's heartbreaking, but it's really a reminder to appreciate our kids for who they are instead of constantly focusing on their shortcomings.
Ugh, such a tearjerker.
Yeah.
But it's so true.
Yeah.
So instead of controlling people through criticism, it's more about understanding and respecting them.
And that leads us to the next technique. Give honest and sincere appreciation. Because everyone wants to feel important.
Oh, 100%. But how do you make sure it's genuine appreciation?
Yeah.
Not just sucking up.
Well, Carnegie distinguishes between flattery, which can be pretty obvious, and genuine appreciation, which acknowledges something real in the other person.
He uses examples of people like Samuel Brunner.
Yeah.
Abraham Lincoln and John Dillinger, who were driven by a need for importance in totally different ways, obviously.
Right. But it shows you how universal that desire is.
Yeah, no matter who you are. Everybody wants to feel important.
And when you ignore that need, it can have some pretty serious consequences.
What do you mean?
Well, he talks about how it can lead to resentment, discouragement, and it can even impact people's mental health.
Wow. This makes me think about how I show appreciation to my own family.
Yeah.
I could definitely do a better job.
It's easy to fall into that trap of taking people for granted.
Totally.
And focusing on what they're not doing instead of what they are doing.
Yeah. So it's all about perspective.
Exactly. And like with the criticism piece, a small shift can make a world of difference. He tells the story of a husband who transformed his marriage by just shifting his focus from what he wanted to change about his wife to expressing appreciation for her as she was.
Wow. That's a really good example of how just changing your mindset can have a ripple effect.
Yeah. And it leads us to the third technique, arouse in the other person an eager want. This is where I think Carnegie's genius really shines.
Okay. How do we do that? Make someone want to do something we suggest.
Well, he uses this story about Emerson and his son, who were struggling to get a calf into the barn.
Ooh.
And they're pushing and pulling, focused on what they want. But the calf's not budging.
This sounds familiar. My kids do this with vegetables.
Right. It's a universal struggle.
It is.
But the key is, like the Irish housemaid in the story figures out, to understand what the calf wants, she lets the calf suck her finger and gently guides it into the barn.
So it's about appealing to the other person's needs.
Exactly. It works with people, too. Carnegie tells a story about a man who wanted to get his rent reduced. And instead of begging or making excuses, he focused on the hotel manager's perspective, pointing out how raising the rent might actually hurt the hotel's bottom line.
And I'm guessing it worked.
It did. He got a 50% reduction.
Wow. I never would have thought to do that.
See?
Yeah.
That's the power of appealing to the other person's self-interest.
It's brilliant. I never realize how often I just try to force my agenda instead of understanding what motivates them.
Right. It's a common mistake. But now that we've kind of laid the groundwork with these fundamental techniques, we can move on to how to make people like you.
Okay, let's do it.
Ready for part 2?
Yeah, bring it on. All right, so we covered those like fundamental techniques for handling people.
Right.
Now for part 2. 6 ways to make people like you. I got to say, this is like way more exciting than just handling people. This is about connection.
Yeah, you got it. And, Carnegie's approach isn't about manipulation. It's about, cultivating genuine connections.
Right, so it benefits everyone.
Yeah.
So how do we do that? How do we make people like us?
Well, he starts off with this principle. That actually echoes that first technique we talked about, becoming genuinely interested in other people.
I love that.
Yeah.
Like to have a friend be a friend.
Exactly.
But how do we put that into action?
Well, Carnegie uses this kind of charming anecdote about his childhood dog, Tippy,
Okay.
who just instinctively knew how to win friends by showing a genuine interest in everyone. Oh, it's so true. We all know how good it feels when someone's really listening to us, asking questions. It makes you feel seen.
Exactly, and that's what
Yeah.
sets those who genuinely connect with others apart from those who are just going through the motions. He uses the example of the magician, Thurston, who would view his audience with gratitude and a desire to give his best.
As opposed to those magicians who see the audience as a bunch of suckers.
Right, just waiting to be tricked.
Yeah.
And you think about it, when you're genuinely interested in someone, you listen more, you ask questions, you really learn about their world.
It's true. It's like the basis of any relationship.
Exactly.
He also tells this story about a sales rep who made a point of connecting with everyone in a drugstore, not just the owner.
Yeah, everyone.
And that genuine interest paid off. Because when the owner was about to drop his company, the relationships he had built with the staff helped him save the account.
It's a great example of how those small everyday connections can really have an impact down the road.
Yeah, you never know.
Okay, so genuine interest is like the foundation. What's the next building block?
Well, this one's simple but powerful. Smile. A genuine smile just sends this message of warmth.
It's true. A smile can just change everything. I love that anecdote about the baby who smiled at the distressed man in the vet's office.
Yeah.
It just shifted the energy in the whole room.
It's contagious.
Yeah.
Positivity is contagious.
But he makes a distinction, right, between a genuine smile and just like a fake grin.
Yeah, you can't just
Not.
plaster on a fake smile.
Right.
People can see right through that.
They can.
And it just comes across as manipulative or insincere.
So it has to be authentic.
It does.
Okay, genuine interest, a smile. What's next?
Remembering and using people's names, Carnegie stresses that a person's name is, to that person, the sweetest and most important sound.
Oh, this is a tough one for me. I am terrible at remembering names.
Very.
It's like my brain just hits delete. As soon as I'm introduced to someone,
But when someone remembers your name.
oh yeah, it's amazing.
Right.
Yeah.
You feel seen, you feel valued. He tells a story about Jim Farley, this political mastermind who could remember the names of 50,000 people.
50,000 people.
50,000 people.
Oh my gosh.
And he would use it to build relationships.
Wow.
So it really shows you the power of this simple act.
It's huge.
Because our names are tied to our identity.
They are.
When someone remembers it, it signals that they see us as an individual.
He even suggests techniques like repetition and association to help us remember names.
It's worth the effort. Just think about how good you feel. When someone remembers your name,
Yeah.
you can create that same feeling for others.
Totally. Okay, so smile, remember names. What else?
Be a good listener. Encourage others to talk about themselves.
Oh, he tells that great story about the woman at the bridge party
Ew.
who just wanted to hear about the host's travels.
Yeah.
And she thought he was so interesting just because he was a good listener.
Because he was letting her talk
Yeah.
and asking questions.
Yes.
And it's a reminder that we don't always have to be the life of the party or have the best stories.
I'm always trying to think of clever things to say
Yeah.
And it's exhausting.
It is.
So maybe I should just focus on listening more.
Right.
Yeah.
It takes the pressure off.
Okay, so far we have genuine interest, a smile, remembering names, being a good listener.
Yeah.
What else?
Talk in terms of the other person's interests.
Oh, okay.
It's about finding that common ground
Yes.
and engaging with their passions.
Like, Carnegie hears that Roosevelt.
Yeah.
Before meeting a guest, he would research their interests so he could engage them
Yeah.
in a good conversation.
What dedication.
Right.
It puts our small talk to shame.
Totally. He put in the effort.
He did.
Yeah.
To understand what mattered to them.
He contrasts that with people who only talk about their own interests.
We all know those people who just drone on and on about themselves.
It's a major turnoff.
It is.
One of my favorites is the story about the bakery salesman who finally won over this difficult client by showing interest in his passion for the greeters organization.
Greeters, yeah.
It's so random.
But they found that common ground.
They did.
Yeah.
So 5 down, 1 to go. Remind me what we've got so far.
Genuine interest, a warm smile, remembering names, being a good listener, and talking in terms of their interests.
Okay, I'm taking notes here.
Good.
What's the last one?
This one brings us full circle, back to the importance of appreciation. Make the other person feel important, and do it sincerely.
I love that. It's about making them feel valued.
It is.
Respected.
He shares this really touching anecdote about an elderly woman who gave away her prized Packard to her nephew.
Really?
Not because he was the most deserving, but because he was the only one who genuinely appreciated her and her possessions.
Wow. So it wasn't about the car at all. It was about being seen.
Exactly.
And valued.
Yeah.
Which we all want.
We all want.
No matter what.
And Carnegie actually connects this to professional success as well. He uses the example of George Eastman, founder of Kodak, who, despite his massive success, still yearned for that recognition and appreciation.
It's so human, right? To just want to feel like you matter.
We all want to know that we matter.
Yeah.
And taking the time to make others feel that way is a surefire way to build strong, lasting relationships.
That is so good. These 6 ways to make people like you, they're just such great reminders.
They are.
It's like a blueprint for building those authentic connections.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got the fundamentals of handling people and how to make people like us. I'm really curious about this next part, winning people to our way of thinking. Because let's be honest, we could all use a little help with that.
Absolutely.
But what's next?
Part 3. You ready?
Yes, bring it on. Okay, so bring on the persuasion tactics. This is part 3, how to win people to your way of thinking. This sounds a little sneaky, but I'm trusting Carnegie to keep it ethical.
You're right to be cautious. I mean, there are definitely ways to, manipulate people.
Right.
But that's not what Carnegie's about. He's all about persuasion through understanding and respect.
Okay, so no Jedi mind tricks.
No, definitely not.
So how do we do it then?
Well, he starts off with a principle. That might surprise you. You can't win an argument.
Wait a minute. Isn't the whole point of an argument to win?
It's natural to want to come out on top, but Carnegie argues that. Even if you win the argument, you often lose something much more valuable. The relationship.
Well, interesting.
Yeah, he shares a story about having dinner in London and getting into this heated debate about a Shakespeare quote.
Oh, yeah. He was totally right about the quote.
Right.
But it kind of ruined the evening.
It did.
Yeah.
So it's a good reminder that sometimes being right just isn't worth it.
So how do we, handle disagreements then?
Well, his next principle kind of flows from this. Show respect for the other person's opinions. Never say you're wrong.
That's hard, especially when you know you're right.
It is. But you got to remember that most people aren't persuaded by logic alone.
Right.
Their opinions are tied to their emotions and their sense of identity.
So if you contradict them directly, it just makes them defensive.
Exactly. And they just dig in their heels even more.
Like a man convinced against his will?
Right.
Is of the same opinion still?
He illustrates this with a story of a lawyer who lost a case because he bluntly corrected a Supreme Court justice.
Oh, well.
So by challenging the justice's ego, he totally undermined his own credibility.
So if you can't tell someone they're wrong, how do you handle it?
Well, Carnegie suggests this, really. Surprisingly effective technique. If you are wrong, admit it quickly and emphatically.
He tells that great story about getting a speeding ticket and admitting he was wrong right away.
He completely disarmed the officer.
That's so true.
And, it's counterintuitive. But admitting our mistakes can actually enhance our credibility.
It's like taking the wind out of their sails.
Exactly.
Because they're expecting a fight.
Right.
And you're just like, yep, you got me.
Yeah.
It's a really good strategy.
It is.
Okay, so we've learned that arguing is a losing battle. Respect for other opinions is crucial. Admitting our mistakes can be disarming. What else?
Well, he continues this theme of approaching disagreements with grace. In his next principle, a drop of honey.
Okay.
It's about using friendliness and understanding to win people over, even when there's conflict.
That's a good one.
He uses the example of John D. Rockefeller Jr. facing a mob of angry miners who wanted to hang him.
Oh, my God.
But instead of meeting force with force, he approached them with respect and a genuine desire to understand.
Some empathy.
Exactly.
That's powerful.
And it worked. He was able to de-escalate the situation.
Wow. That's incredible.
It really is.
So what other strategies does Carnegie offer for winning people to our way of thinking?
Well, the next principle builds on listening. Let the other person do a great deal of the talking.
I like this one.
Yeah.
Gives me a break.
But really, when you encourage the other person to talk, you're giving them the space to express themselves and feel heard.
Which makes them feel important.
Exactly.
Validated.
And when people feel heard, they're much more likely to be open to your perspective.
Okay, so let them talk.
Let them talk.
Okay, what else?
This one kind of takes that idea a step further. Let the other person feel that the idea is his or hers.
So it's like you're planting the seed, but
Yeah.
making them feel like they came up with it.
Exactly.
I'm going to try that with my kids.
Do it, it works.
Next time they need to clean their rooms.
It's like the IKEA effect.
Yeah.
We value things more when we've had a hand in creating them.
Okay, I like it.
But, all of this hinges on a really crucial skill. Try honestly to see things from the other person's point of view.
That's empathy. Right?
It is.
Yeah.
And it's easier said than done, especially when you feel strongly about something.
It's true.
But if you can really understand where the other person is coming from, you're much more likely to find that common ground.
So put yourself in their shoes.
Yeah.
See things from their perspective.
Carnegie says this is one of the most important factors in achieving success in any field.
It makes sense.
And it's not just about understanding their logic, but also being sympathetic to their ideas and desires.
So acknowledging their feelings.
Exactly.
Even if you don't agree.
Even if you don't agree.
What's a masterclass in building bridges, not walls.
You beautifully said.
What else?
He builds on that with this principle, appeal to the nobler motives.
Okay, what does that mean?
It's about framing your suggestions in a way that aligns with the other person's values and aspirations.
So they feel like it's the right thing to do,
Exactly.
not just what's in it for them.
Carnegie argues that people are inherently good, and they want to do the right thing.
Okay, so tap into that,
Yeah.
that desire.
Okay, ready for the grand finale?
Yeah, hit me.
All right. Dramatize your ideas.
So, don't just have a good idea. You got to present it in a way that's engaging and memorable.
We are bombarded with information all day long.
All day, yeah.
To cut through the noise, you have to make your message stick.
Okay, how do we do that?
He gives this example of a salesman
Yeah.
who wanted to illustrate the competition in his industry. So he literally dumped 32 jars of cold cream on his client's desk.
Whoa.
It was bold,
That's a visual, yeah.
but it worked.
It got his attention.
It did.
All right, so be dramatic.
Be dramatic.
I like it.
And this ties into the next principle, throw down a challenge.
Okay.
It's about appealing to people's competitive spirit.
He uses the example of Theodore Roosevelt being motivated to run for governor.
Yeah, because of a challenge
Wow.
from Thomas Collier Platt.
That's incredible.
It is.
Okay, throw down a challenge.
Throw down a challenge.
What else?
Begin with praise and honest appreciation.
Oh, so like the sandwich approach.
It is.
Positive, negative, positive.
It compares it to a dentist. Using Novocaine. Before drilling a tooth,
Right?
you still get the drilling,
You do.
but it minimizes the pain. And even when delivering criticism, he suggests doing so indirectly.
So don't say, you messed up.
Yeah.
Find a more subtle way to address it.
It allows the person to save face.
Yeah.
And maintain their dignity.
It's about respect.
Exactly.
All right, I like it.
And that ties into this next one. Talk about your own mistakes before criticizing the other person.
Leading by example.
Yes.
Show that you're not perfect.
He shares a story about realizing that he was being too harsh on his secretary.
Yeah.
And he learned to be more understanding by reflecting on his own past mistakes.
That's good.
It is.
Humility.
All right, last one. Praise the slightest improvement and praise every improvement. Be hearty in your approbation and lavish in your praise.
So celebrate the small wins.
Yes.
Okay.
He uses the example of Pete Barlow, a dog trainer who achieved incredible results by just focusing on rewarding even the smallest signs of progress.
Wow, that's amazing.
It is.
The power of encouragement.
Right. And he shares the stories of Enrico Caruso and Charles Dickens, whose lives were literally transformed by the encouragement of others.
Wow.
And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into how to win friends and influence people.
Wow, what a journey. We covered everything from handling difficult people to winning them over to becoming a leader.
Carnegie's insights are just as relevant today.
They are. It's incredible.
It's a testament to the power of human connection.
So for our listeners out there, what's the one thing they should remember from all of this?
Carnegie emphasizes that mastering these principles requires consistent practice and a genuine commitment to understanding others.
It's not about quick fixes.
It's not.
It's about building those relationships.
It's about cultivating a mindset of empathy and respect.
So start small.
Yes.
Pick one principle.
Try it out.
See what happens.
You might be surprised.
And let us know how it goes. Share your experiences with us on social media or in a future deep dive. Until then, keep learning, keep connecting, and keep making the world a better place, one genuine interaction at a time.